island for spring break, so they're down your way. I should have Barrett joining me soon. Oh, you can't hear me? Okay, never mind. You can hear me now. Good. Good, good, good. All righty, dighty. Well, we're going to get started here in just a minute. Waiting to see if my fantastic co-host Barrett joins me. Here he comes.
I'm here. I was
It's like
looking for your name on my
oh,
inbox,
yeah,
but
no.
it was actually
Kirk
Kirk. So,
invited you to the Zoom.
but I did only start looking for it like 62 seconds ago. So that's my fault for not preparing earlier.
I do feel like it's like the dental office, right? We've been on several meetings together today, you and I, and you started out a couple minutes late on the very first one, and then it just keeps going throughout the whole rest of the day.
Are you throwing me under the bus in front of the
I'm
people
just
that?
trying to relate to our community of attendees because that
Yes.
happens every single day in practice. Your first patient shows up late and then has to go to the bathroom and then hasn't been in a year. So you have to do more
Yeah.
co-discovery than you expected. And now you're just playing catch up all day long.
And I showed up for your meeting this morning, first meeting of the day, 2 minutes late. And look, I'm 2 minutes late and still
But you're here.
I'm
So
here.
it also gave everybody plenty of time to join in. So
Yeah.
it's great. And we were chatting about, the weather all over the country from Fargo to Savannah. So
Sweet.
we've got people from a little bit of everywhere here with us. But we're going to go ahead and hop in and get started.
Let's do it.
Cool. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So today we're talking about future-proofing your practice with smarter strategies. And we have the fabulous Barrett here with me today.
The fabulous.
Fabulous, borderline fantastic. I used to have a patient who always, when you'd ask him how he was doing, he would always say fabulous, borderline fantastic, which I thought was pretty jolly. Before we get into the topic of future proofing your practice, I want to share something that we have that helps teams do this. So, we have a lot of options within our Best Practices Association and our ACT coaching community to help people, just like all of you that are watching this webinar right now, to do things like strategic vision, build a healthier culture, think about the numbers in a different way. And it all starts right within our BPA, our Best Practices Association, which is an online community platform where you can jump in and join us for events, event recordings. You can have access to the resources that we share on podcasts and webinars and things of this nature. And there's different levels in which you can engage with what we do within ACT and the BPA. And so you can join us for free right off the jump, or you can elevate to a premium level or even bring your whole team on board, or you can jump all the way into coaching. So we say number one, level one, you can do it on your own. You can join the BPA and see what it's all about, explore things on your own and see how far you can go. And if you decide you want a little more engagement or support, we do have our To the Top Study Club community. And that's a way to do it as a group, to get with other like-minded dentists and business owners so that you don't feel like this journey is quite so lonely. And if you want even a bit more accountability than that, we do have our one-on-one pro coaching program. We work directly with lead practice coaches like myself and several others we have on our team who are excellent at helping dentists think differently and really create the future that they want for their practice. So you can kind of go on pick your own adventure, right? Like those old storybooks. I'm showing my age. And do this any way that you want. So we have that on your desktop as well as in an app. So if you're not already part of our BPA community, I encourage you to search up Best Practices Association in your app store, or you can scan the QR code that's here, or you can go to join.actdental.com and be a part of the conversations and what's happening within that community every single day. My phone's actually been blowing up today. We have a lot of action in the BPA, and it's so fun to see members supporting one another. So we'll come back to that at the end too, so you can see that again. But I want to jump right into the topic for everybody that's carved a little bit of time out of their day. Thank you for being here. And we're going to talk about future proofing your practice. And we always like to start with why. It's really important to make sure that if we're talking about something and we're again carving out this very important coveted time, that we know why we're doing this. And we think this topic is really important because in private practice ownership and entrepreneurship, it's harder than ever. And the most successful dentists leave they don't leave their future to chance. They're making strategic plans and they're creating the reality that they want. Because if you're just caught in the cycle of reacting, it's just going to happen to you. Your culture is going to happen to you. The outcomes are going to happen to you. Profitability is just going to be what it is. There's no real plan or action that's structured around how to get where you want to go. So if you're reacting instead of planning, this is definitely for you. And without that clear strategy, it's just easy to get stuck in a practice that runs you instead of you running it. And when we think about strategic vision, and I do want you to shed a little light here in just a minute, Barrett, on this concept, because you've been in private practice as a dentist. So you have a whole different perspective than those of us that were on the team side. But the reality of our industry is that corporate dentistry is growing. Now, private practice is still alive and well, and even fee for service practice, but it is growing and it's becoming more prominent. And that's really what we're competing with when we're in private practice is this DSO model. And I say that in a way of like, we're competing with them, but not really, because we're really doing two different things and seeking out different types of patients. But in the grand scheme of the profession, we kind of are. And so without a vision, you're going to risk becoming just another dental office instead of a thriving, purpose-driven practice where you can really differentiate yourself and set yourself apart from the others. And if you're not doing this strategically, you're just working harder, but you're not really getting ahead. And that's what a lot of our clients come to us with, I feel like we're doing pretty well and I work really hard and I'm really busy. I'm just not crossing that plateau. I'm not really getting where I want to go. And that's where we can really help them create that vision and that strategy and ultimately design your own future, because that's how you're going to be able to build the practice that you want and support your personal life, the better practice, better life philosophy. So I want to turn it over to you, Barrett, to just shed a little light on why this topic is so important before we jump into some of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's near and dear to my heart as a fee-for-service private practice dentist for almost 20 years. The BPA really, establishing a solution and a place to go to kind of save private practice, or be the beacon, the north light, the northern star for private practice. We love private practice. We think that is a definition of better practice, better life. And just to put some metrics to it, corporate dentistry is growing. It's still growing about a 1% a year. It's still only at 84%. So 86% of the industry is still private practice or independent dental practices. Now, I think private practice has never been more potentially beneficial. We're gonna enter a golden age here, but it's got to be different. The strategy has to be right. The thinking has to be right. And what we see all the time, which you alluded to, is that a lot of private practice dentists find themselves working hard in that high volume game. And when we're in a high volume model, our profit margins are thin. And now it is going to be hard to compete with corporate dentistry or DSOs, which are really good at the high volume margin. Why? They have buying power, they have efficiency of scale. And that's not to say that you shouldn't work hard and you shouldn't be busy and all that, but it's to find the right mix. And that's kind of why we exist in the BPA. And a lot of why I do what I do is to help dentists with the right thinking, the right strategies and the right tools to say, like, I want to be a private practice. I want to be independent. I like that. But I need some help knowing how to set this up so my better practice, better life. And so if that describes you, join us, reach out. This is exactly why we're on this podcast today, or this webinar today, is to help you do that. So take it away,
I love
Miranda.
that. Yeah, I
Yep.
love that. And just to layer one more piece of that before we jump into it is it can feel very overwhelming. So
Mhm.
somebody might be saying, I get it. I'm right there. This why totally speaks to me. But how the heck am I supposed to go from where I'm at to where I think I want to go? And that's really where that strategic thought and some guided coaching, whether again, it be on your own through some of the tools and resources or with a coach, that's what we help people do every day. And so we're going to give you just a taste today, because we only have an hour, of how you can take some of these big thoughts and turn them into tangible day-to-day action within your practice so that over time you will get where you want to go. So let's jump in. And we always say start with why. And part of the why with vision and future proofing your practice is that you have to really have a strong foundation of core values before you can go anywhere or make any plans for the future in your practice. So, starting with that strong foundation, the ones we have here on the screen are our ACT core values, and we live and die by these values on a regular basis. And it's really important to make sure that every decision that you make in your practice, including when you're thinking about long term and short term strategy, is filtered through those core values. You want hiring, patient experience, and again, the strategy decisions you're making every day guided by those values, because your core values are really the compass. And growth either doesn't occur or it's at random and often not fulfilling unless you know who you are, and on a day-to-day basis you're able to live within the values that are what you want your practice to be. So if you are very innovative and growth driven and you want that to be a part of your practice, and you want a team that supports growth and innovation and getting excited about new ideas and trying new things, you need to build that into the values from the beginning before you even start going down the path of strategy and how you're going to make it happen. Because if you don't know what your values are and who you're going to need to help get you there, how can you hire the right people to put them in the right seat? So it all starts with this foundation around core values. So we're going to talk just briefly about what core values are. And if anybody's been to an ACT webinar before or listened to a podcast or pretty much anything we do, we mention core values because they're that important. They're a handful of guiding principles in which your dental practice navigates really every decision. They guide principles to make sure that you don't need to worry about these feelings and kind of frantic fear-based thoughts. You can always go back to your core values and say, what would my core values tell me to do about this? If it's a people problem, if it's a decision of any kind, what are those intrinsic values that really make up who I am and what I want my practice to be, say about this, and run them through that filter. When we're looking at core values, it's really important to remember that they're more than just words. A lot of places, actually, it's interesting because we think and talk about core values so much. I see them pretty much everywhere I go. And even like my kids' school, you walk in the door and they have their core values hanging on the wall. But it's more important than just what's hanging on the wall. We have to make sure that those core values are alive. And so we have to be able to provide clear direction for decision making. Again, no external justifications needed because everything's built around these intrinsic values. And ultimately, those values are what shape the culture. And the strongest practices that are the most successful are built on unwavering core values.
So let me talk on core values for a minute. So I'm gonna tie the anxious dental dentist that's listening to core values, and they're like, yeah, that sounds great, but I got work to do. I got I got to
I
figure
don't
out
have
this
time
P-
for that
I
fluffy
got to
stuff.
figure out this PPO stuff. I got to hire a hygienist. My front desk, I've been working on some systems about scheduling. I got to get people in the chair. Like, that sounds great. I get it, but that's kind of fluffy, not like I need the real stuff. And I agree. And having been on both sides of the sword on this and having do this, you need core values so that you can decide what type of strategy of doing dentistry is right. You need core values so that when you do drop a PPO, you have the team around you that's going to help you do it successfully. You need core values so that your turnover starts reducing and you know exactly the right person to hire. So while it's warm and fuzzy, all those like tangible day-to-day things that are holding you back from even like contemplating doing this core value thing, you need core values to do all those. It doesn't mean you have to like spend a year on core values before you can get to it. No, you can do them simultaneously. But this is right here the bottleneck of so many of your problems: hiring and firing. What kind of dentistry should I do? What type of people should work with me? It's all right here. And so if you were like me before I knew better, I'd be like, yeah, Miranda, whatever. I got real stuff to do. This is where you got to dig in and listen and do this work.
That's such a great point. And quite often, when we hop on a coaching call as a practice coach and an issue is brought to the table that wants to get talked, we always go back and say, well, let's look at your core values and how that feeds through that process. Like, you're having an issue with a team member, Let's talk about core values for a minute. Where are we rubbing against a core value here? Like, I don't know if I should go this way or that way with the next iteration of my practice. Well, what do our core values tell us?
Yep.
So they really do help. Jenny, one of our practice coaches and our director of people and culture, she will often say you have to consider the core values like a person in the room. They have a seat at the table. And so when you're thinking about strategy or thinking about decisions or you have a problem, core values are a team member that's sitting right next to you that you have to stop and kind of engage with those values and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they do really help you to make those tough decisions. So, some of the key elements is alignment and just making sure that we're aligned as a team, not only with each other, but also where we're going and we're fulfilling a mutual purpose. They're also going to help with accountability. This is where I was just mentioning team issues are pretty common. Most dentists don't go into dentistry because they're so excited about leading a group of people. It could be 4 people or it could be 64 people. It's just as hard, regardless of how many, if it's not something that you're used to doing or comfortable doing. And so, values, core values, really help you to lean into accountability with your team, setting clear behavioral expectations, and then also being able to provide feedback in that way. And they also help with a consistent patient experience. When you have clear values, you're going to deliver a more consistent and intentional experience with your patients that suits those values. You're not going to always be able to say the difference, but people should be able to feel those values alive in your practice based on the behaviors that people are exhibiting. And then again, supporting growth. It's going to let you know how adaptable do I need to be. You might not be super growth minded. That might not be what you're into. You like the niche that you're in and you want to stay there, but you just want to make it the best you can be. So maybe embracing growth isn't a value for you, but leaning into what your values are so that you can make sure that when you make decisions moving forward, they're always going to be supporting truly who you and your practice want to be. Any other thoughts before I jump into how we identify core values?
No, I like the how. Let's go to the how.
Okay, great.
Let's get to the meat.
Let's get to it. So, we have an exercise and a resource within the BPA premium space and beyond, in which you can actually work through identifying your core values. And so, what you're going to want to do first is sit down and think about your 1 to 3 current team members or former team members who just really embody the best of what your practice is and what you want it to be. The people that you say, man, I wish I could clone so and so. Well, what is it? What are the characteristics? What are the behaviors? What are the actions that that person is exuding on a regular basis that makes them so awesome and makes you feel like they just belong here? And I really hope they never leave. And jot those down. Getting as specific around those characteristics or behaviors as you can, just brainwriting a bit. When you think about them and things that have happened or occur in your practice, just make a list of what some of those potential behaviors or characteristics may be. And then the next step is to do the same thing, but it's kind of our anti values list. So, looking at those people that have worked with you in the past, who maybe you would say, absolutely not, we will not be ever taking that person back. And what is it about the behaviors or characteristics or actions that made them a bad fit for the practice? If there was that one person that just never gelled with everybody else or just culturally felt like a bit of a splinter in the progress, what was it about that person or their actions or behaviors? And make the list. What you're probably going to see when you look at these 2 lists is they're just kind of the opposite of one another. But it's nice to get it down on paper and really start to see what themes are coming to light for you. And once you have that list in place, the next step is to stop and take a look in the mirror. And this is sometimes hard because we like to think the best of ourselves, but really stop and say, okay, if these, at this point, you might have, 8 or 9 things that really feel like they fit. Do I personally, as the leader, embody these values? Because as goes the leader, goes the team, and you can't ask of your team to be or do something that you're not able to also show them by demonstration of your own behavior. So if you aren't in a place where you are living that value, then we probably are going to remove that from the list. And perhaps it falls into your aspirational values list, somewhere we'd like to be able to go as a practice, but we're just not there yet. And so you're going to start to trim down that larger list that came from steps 1 and 2 and get a little bit more of a tailored list going. Maybe now you have 5 or 6 or 7 ideas about what you think core values should be. And then you can stop and look at each one of those values and ask yourself if the dental industry changed in a way that made this value a competitive disadvantage, like patient education, or if the industry changed, or if you weren't in dentistry at all. Like, is this a universal value that could be go beyond dentistry itself? Then you're going to start to know that this is a true core experience. So taking dentistry itself out of the equation and just saying, how would my business operate through this value? And does it really fit what I want my business to be?
I like how you said that. I think that's a better way to even term that question 4 is what if, take the dental work out of it. And what this is getting to is that core values aren't a business strategy.
Mhm.
You your financial success or performance in your business shouldn't be tangibly as a result of core values. Meaning, we don't do them. I'm getting a call. We don't do these to succeed. We do these because they're core. So I did when I first got a hold of this tool and did it in my own practice. I'll just tell you what the experience was for me. So I when for the first half of my career, I had this woman named Leslie, and she was my assistant. And she's still one of my favorite people in the world. Like, I sincerely love her. And she's just like, they broke the mold with her. She worked hard. She cared more about the practice than I did some days. She truly cared about the patient. She showed up early. She stayed late. She cross-functioned. She would do anything it took. And she was always smiling and always happy. And she made me feel good about myself. And she kind of took care of me. She's like a second mom. I loved her. So when I did this, I just said, Leslie. And for you, and so you have those people who are like, you love them, but you've never sat down and said, what specifically, like what actual behaviors, what actual outcomes, what actually does she do that makes me love her? So I'm like, Leslie, right? And I wrote it all down. And then the opposite. And so my point in this is it's not very hard to get you in about 10 minutes. You can have a pretty good solid draft list of potential core values based nothing more on I had this one employee, they're amazing. And you sit down and you take 10 minutes to write what about him or her did I really love? And you write it down. And so it's kind of fun.
It can be really fun. And I think I have this built in. Let's see. Um, I think I have it coming up in just a minute around verbs, but we want to turn these behaviors or actions into verbs at some
Mhm.
point. So when you're mentioning Leslie and how she works really hard and she gives it her all and owns it more than you do at times, you can take that and say, like, okay, clearly I want someone who gives it their all. I mean, your core value could literally be give it your all. Like,
Mhm.
it's literally that simple. But you do want it to be a verb, something actionable where you could stop and say, man, I'm really struggling with poor Susie, who we throw under the bus all the time, Susie right now. And it's been going on for a while. Like, I don't understand what's going on with Susie. And then you stop and you look through your core values and you're like, yeah, she goes to CE all the time. She totally embraces growth. No, that's not it. Yeah, she's a team player. She's ride or die. We have a team that has ride or die as one of their core values, which I think is really fun. She's definitely a team player, gets along with everyone, helps everyone out. And then you might have gives it your all. And you're like, that's where I get stuck. Cause she's kind of one of those like, she's gonna like hit the bar, but never really rise above the bar. And then you have this thing, and it's not about Susie anymore. It's about giving it all you've got. And how can we talk with Susie and integrate feedback with Susie to help her see that it's not you, it's just this value, and how can we get you to live it a little stronger on a regular basis? And we're not going to dig really deep into how to bring your core values alive today, but we do have a step in this process when you work fully through developing your core values where you stop and say, like, how do we help keep these alive, and how do we help the team to develop and grow within them?
Now
But
let me interrupt you for one more minute just to bring back to like tangible real world experience. So you should start if you haven't done these, you should start on them right away. If you have done them, but you maybe don't live them, you should re-energize them. If you've did them a while ago, you should redo them and make sure they're fresh and blow the dust off of them. And if you're first to them, it's going to take a little while before they're like locked in. But you got to start. Now imagine, fast forward 6 months, a year, and you've been using them. You've been talking about them. You like, I hired 2 more people according to these core values. Like, our team's awesome. What? And then your team's actually holding themselves accountable to them and using them and living them. And it's never perfect, but imagine fast forward some time when you're like, these are really guiding our behaviors. Now you bring something big, like, hey team, I want to go over here. I want to drop this PPO, or I want to do this, or I want to totally do a different type of clinical protocol. Now, how much faster does that change get accepted by your team? What's the success level? I mean, obviously it's going to skyrocket. So if you need like a tangible reason to do it, some of you do, that's it. Like, once you get this in, everything you want to do just gets better, easier, more successful, more enjoyable, which is, the ultimate idea.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to reduce your stress as much as possible as a business owner so that you can get to work on the practice and strategy and growth and in the patient experience and the team engagement, which is this next little piece of how you pressure test it, that's just going to happen. And you only have to touch it now and then to keep it on track. You're not having to like manage and puppeteer those experiences and your team interactions and actions on a regular basis. So that's really the next step with developing them is once you have a potential list of core values, you want to pressure test them a little bit and say, okay, potential value number one is, give it your all. You're going to say, how does that show up in the patient experience? Does it now? Doesn't it now? What would it look like if it did? Same thing with team interaction. What behaviors would make this value evident within our team? Think about those daily interactions, problem solving, decision making. And you go through that with each of the values, pressure testing each one to just really say, what would this look like? And then ultimately, you're going to come up with 3 to 5 values that are verb based, action based, that really feel like they support the core of what you want your practice to be. And actually, I'm going to pop back up for just a second because then you're going to make commitment statements or a descriptive statement for each one of them that helps the team to really understand what this means. And you'll see with our values here that each one of the values has a tiny little paragraph or statement that helps to explain what this actually shows up like in practice, because then you're able to have the team really fully understand the clarity of what's expected of them within interactions with each other, as well as within the patient experience. And then what this ultimately really does for you, if I can get back to where I need to go here. Oh, maybe. Oh, holy cow. We went so far ahead. I think my computer was frozen. Okay. What that really helps you to do is if we go all the way back to the top when we were talking about why, we need to be competitive in our industry and we need to stand out and we need to set ourselves apart. Now, we're not digging into differentiation today. That could be probably a 2-hour webinar on its own because there's so many things that go into truly differentiating yourself and making yourself unique within the market. But core values are the foundation of that as well because once you know who you are and what you want to be and how you want to be represented in the industry with your patient experiences, you can start to really stand out from the crowd. So when someone does call your office and then also call an office down the street, the experience they get on the phone emulates, like your core values exude through that person on the phone, and the person calling that potential new patient knows exactly who you are. And they can either say, yes, these are the people for me, or they can call down the street and get your transactional, like, when was your last visit? Can I get your insurance? Yes, you can come in. Like, it's 2 different experiences you're able to create. Same thing when someone walks through the door. The way someone feels in your practice is going to be based on those values. And if they're strong and alive and well, you're going to be able to create these experiences that really help you to stand out.
Ooh,
And
ooh, ooh, ooh.
hand up.
What if, easiest way to differentiate, what if you actually told people what your core values are?
Oh, yeah.
Differentiation number one. The man in the mirror moment is like, why? I'm a dentist. I own my own practice. I look in the mirror and I look at myself and I say, why would anyone come to me instead of the 7 practices within 5 miles of me? And we got to be able to answer that question. And a lot of people say, well, we're really good at customer service and we do really pretty crowns and we're really nice and we have really nice hours. And every dental says that. Everyone. No one says we're pretty good at customer service. Our crowns are okay.
We're nice most of the
But we
time.
give chocolate chip cookies. Like no one says that, so you're not differentiated if you say what everyone else says. But what if you say, you know what, Mrs. Jones, we do really great dentistry, but let me tell you why it's great. Because we believe in our values, and here are our values. We're this and we do this and we do this. And because we are these kind of people, we give that to you. These patients that also believe that, they're like, this is amazing. No dentist has ever talked like this before. I'm going to go here. So if you're like, what's this whole differentiation thing? I got to be the special dentist. No, what if you just talk to people and told them about your core values? Differentiation number one, done.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a practice that I coach, and I love that one of their core values is around fun because they're just
Mhm.
really fun people. And patients will tell them quite often, it feels so good. Can I work here? You guys seem to really
Yeah.
have fun. You guys really seem to enjoy it. Hey, guess what? That's one of our core values. We actually talk and live that every single day because it's so important for us to feel good at work, and we want you to feel good when you're here. And it's so easy to build that into the conversation, and it really does start to set you apart. So, if you want to learn more about differentiation, we do have more on that podcasts, webinars, resources. We've talked about it before. I'm sure we'll talk about it again, but I know we keep talking about the BPA, but we finally have this place where everything is in
Right.
one place and you can go find it all. So, when we transition away from the foundation of core values, which is always where you start, we really need to start getting into the tangible like, okay, well, how do I make this happen? How do I know who I am, who I want to be, and how I want my team to behave and what people experience and feel when they're here. But I need to think logistically now. I need to strategize 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road and bring that all the way down into next week. What are we going to do to help move the needle towards that? And so we really lean into strategic vision. And this is the power of thinking long term. Because if you don't define your future, like we said earlier, it's just going to happen to you. Someone or something else is going to create your culture. It's going to create your outcomes if you don't have intention behind it. So the key question to get started is just where do you want your practice to be? The easiest thing to do is look about 3 years out because it gets a lot more complex looking 5 or 10 years out. That's sometimes too big of a picture. But where do you want to be 3 years out? Where do you want to be 5 years out? If you're far enough along in this, where do you want to be 10 years out? And we created a tool. Actually, Barrett created this tool. It's awesome. It helps our clients work through and think through these strategies, and it's our strategic vision creator. And there's some main components in which you can kind of bucket questions that help you to think through this aspect of long term planning. Now, again, we can't go through every one of these questions, but the key elements are clinical clarity, getting really clear about what do you want clinically for your practice in terms of long-term solution. You have a few questions here around what's your overall vision for oral health? What are your goals for the patients who sit in your chair? What do you want your patients to say about your dentistry? What do you want other dentists to say about your dentistry? This is where things I know I work, working as a coach, I have clients who maybe want to start doing more guided implant dentistry. Maybe not maybe I do. I have clients who want to incorporate saliva testing and a more robust periodontal protocol. We have someone who just attended Katrina's masterclass just last week, and he's fired up right now about really getting that going with the hygiene department. So you might have ideas about things you want to do. Maybe you want to go to Quace and start looking at occlusion and doing more comprehensive cases, but you know it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get where you need to be to do that. This is where you can start thinking about what do you want clinically for your practice. And this is big picture and this is long term. And we'll talk in a minute about how to get it down to the day to day. Any thoughts on clinical, Barrett?
No, you covered it. Great job.
The next step is around financial clarity. So a lot of times when people think about strategy, it's like, I want to make $100,000 more. I want to make 10% more. I want to gross produce 4 million in 3 years. Well, how realistic is that? And what does that even mean? And we could argue the fact that gross production doesn't matter at all, you and I. And reality, we need to look at a lot of other data to see where we want to go. But ultimately, it's just, what do you want the profitability of your practice to be? How do you want your financial freedom to feel? Do you feel like you're getting the return you want for the energy you're putting in? Would you like to be able to work less days 5 years from now, but be getting the same or more profitability out of your practice, you can make strategy to do that. We have dentists in our community working 3 days a week and then traveling and enjoying their family on their days off, maybe working on their business on an entire Thursday dedicated to just working on your business and not on teeth. You can do whatever you want. You just have to have a plan for what you want. You might say, I just got out of school. I have loans. I'm not married yet. I don't have kids yet. I want to crush it right now. But 5 years from now, I probably don't want to work 6 days a week picking up extra shifts. I probably do want to be at 3 or 4 days. All right, cool. But you have to make a plan for that or it's never going to happen. And so that's where this financial clarity piece comes in.
Yeah, I
Then
think.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Let me just interrupt. I think the benefit of this tool is it meshes vision with strategy. So a vision without strategy is just a pipe dream. And a true vision requires some discernment of the realities of actually making that happen. And so the idea on this is we're going to have a vision and then we're going to ask the right questions about how do I actually make that happen. It doesn't mean it can't be a high bar to reach, but based on those discernment, those questions, this vision might adjust based on like what you can and can't do, or once it gets down to what do I actually need to do to make that happen, maybe that vision isn't accurate anymore. And so it's really pairing this. Everyone's good at saying I want to make a bunch of money, I want to work no days. Okay, great, I like that. How are you actually going to do that? Let's start to mesh that together. So it's a really valuable tool in that it's not just brainstorming, it's actually meshing brainstorming with some actual behavioral strategic change.
Thank you for pointing that out. And I didn't mention that, but you can see that on the screen that the one side is around like, what is my vision? And then the other side are those more strategic questions that you might ask yourself. And honestly, not only within the pocket that you're looking at. So we're on team culture next. And when I mentioned financial clarity just a minute ago, when you look at if your vision is to make a certain amount of money more or whatever it may be. But then when you get into team culture and you start asking yourself, is my team bigger or smaller? And you start thinking about it and you're like, oh my gosh, I hate managing my team. It's just like my least favorite part of owning a business. Well, if you want to make, go from 1.5 to 4 million, more than likely your team's going to expand a little bit. And so you have to balance not just that pocket you're working within between vision and strategy, but the big picture ultimately as well. So when you're looking at, what is your overall vision for your team? How healthy is our team culture? How can I help my team achieve their career goals? Maybe I think it's really cool when doctors get creative around the things that they want to be able to bring in as intangible benefits within the practice. How is it different from today when you're asking yourself questions like, what do I need to stop doing to make this a reality? What do I need to start doing to make this a reality? And that helps you to balance, like, is this vision something that I really can bring to the table? And then the last bucket that we look at with this tool is around better practice, better life. And if you don't know, that is the core purpose of ACT and the BPA is helping dentists have a better practice so that ultimately you can have a better life, so that you can feel fulfilled and successful and happy. And you don't sit in the parking lot dreading going into work, and then you don't sit in your driveway having to decompress and dreading walking in the door because it's been that day. How do we get you to that better practice, better life? And you have to stop and think through, what does my life look like outside of my practice? 3 years, 5 years, what do I want it to look like? How fast do I want to work? When I leave the office each day, when do I want to leave by? What do I want to leave? I think it's you that always says like, I want to leave like files closed. I want to be able to just walk away at the end of the day and know everything's taken care of. Now I can go enjoy my life. The biggest thing that happened in my life as a clinician when I was working in private practice was being a part of a practice that went 7 to 3 and getting home by 4:15 and feeling like I had half a day left, especially once we hit daylight savings and it was light out till 9 p.m. It changed my life from going home at dinner time and the hustle and bustle of like crying kids and trying to like really quick throw something together, but having that extra time every day. And so what does that look like for you? And being able to design that the way that you want it to be, but asking yourself the right questions to get there. But then the question becomes, well, that sounds amazing. Sure, I can sit down and I can brainstorm this and I can ask myself these questions. But it's still hard for some of us to go from really big picture, what is this going to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, to like you said earlier, well, that's great, but I still have to go to work tomorrow and I have to do that crown prep and I have to do that check in with Susie because she's been struggling lately. And so, how do I give my brain the space to do this work, but then make it happen? And that's a lot of times the really hard part for people. So, how do you turn that long-term vision into action? How do I do it this year, this month, this week, even today? And so that's what this next tool really helps us to do is it takes that strategic vision that we've created, the big high-level picture, and we turn it into something annual where we're setting outcomes and goals that are just for this coming year. So we're bringing that elevation down just a bit. And we're able to say, okay, if I want that in 3 years and it's going to take me 3 years to get there, what do I need to do this year to get started? And so we start with annual outcomes. And this is just what success looks and feels like. It's pretty emotional. It's definitely not specific. Sometimes people get really granular right off the jump, but we got to stay really high level here. And this is just saying, what challenges, obstacles, or stressors do you feel like you'd like resolved in order to help get where you want to go? What do you want more of in your practice, in your day to day? What do you want less of? What do you want your life to look like in the future? And what do you want your practice and your team to look like in the future? And so, just a couple of examples off the top of my head from things that clients I've worked with have developed are, I want to be able to take a vacation and actually enjoy it. I want to be able to take a week off and not stress about my practice and actually enjoy it. By the end of next year, it would be awesome if I could do that. Or sometimes we'll hear, I want to know that my team likes showing up for work and I want to show up for work. So these are very feeling based outcomes. There's not this measurable SMART goals down, at this level. It's really high level. I want to feel some financial freedom. I've been feeling pretty constricted and stressed. I hate having to rely on that one big case that walks through the door once a month to know I'm going to make it. I want to feel a little more freedom financially. And so it's just around that high level. Jenny will often ask, and we say this a lot now in the team, is if we were to sit down a year from now over a glass of wine, or perhaps even I are having an IPA, what would be better? If you were to sit down a year from now and say like, oh my gosh, when I look back, like so much better because what? Like, what are those things that you really want to achieve? And then you're able to take those high level outcomes and turn them into goals, annual goals. And so these are high level actions that drive change towards outcome. Now, I mentioned high level because, again, working with clients all the time on this, what'll happen is, I want to feel more financial freedom. I want to be able to be less reliant on these big cases that might be around your outcome. And then they get right down into like, what are we going to do tomorrow to start making it happen? But your annual goal is still really high level because there's 4 quarters in a year. And so you can actually work throughout the whole year, strategically breaking up your plan for how to get there. So this is just basically saying what needs to change, what needs to evolve, what needs to start or stop happening so that you can move closer to those outcomes and start to realize what you're looking for. If you work with a coach, we do assessments every quarter with the team so that we can get a little feedback on what the team thinks about how we're doing and progressing towards those goals. And little by little by little, you'll see that needle move quarter over quarter. I'm going to jump back to quarter and weekly and day to day. But the other piece of this tool, which is the OGT tool, so outcomes, goals, is targets. And this is where you actually do measure for success. And you look at the data throughout the year to track and measure and assess for, are we moving the needle, the direction that we want it to go, so that you can start to see where we might need to apply countermeasures and what's working and what's not working and take action. And within these targets, the base KPIs or metrics, key performance indicators that we're measuring are within our GAPS scorecard. So again, if you've ever listened to anything we've talked about ever, you probably have heard us mention GAPS. But GAPS is the ultimate scorecard that helps you to see the health of your practice. We will talk about how we can pull up a gap scorecard and immediately know what's happening day to day in an office based on the data and what we're seeing within that scorecard. We're looking at your gross production, your net production, your write-off percentage. How hard are you working for the dollars that you're able to collect? What is your collections percentage? What's your overhead? Where's your cash flow? How much true profit do you ultimately have at the end of the day? And within each of those gaps, that effort gap, that collections gap, that overhead gap, that cash flow gap, there's so much that can be done within your annual goals to move the needle in the right direction. So the bulk of the targets that you're going to be doing to measure if you're successful lives within the gaps. And then you might have a annual goal that's by the end of, I always like to start it with by the end of, 2025, because that helps you stay really high level and focused on the year ahead. By the end of 2025, I want to have enough new patients or enough active patients to support bringing on an associate in the new year. Well, if that's the case, you're probably going to have some strategy throughout the year around new patients and growing your patient base. So while you might have targets around the gaps, you might also have some targets around new patients, new patient count, new patient growth, new patient call conversion rates, new patient hygiene reappointment rates. So you can customize some targets as well, but the bulk of them live within the gaps. Anything there, Barrett, before I move on?
No.
All
Keep
right.
going. Keep going.
Okay. I was like, you love the gaps, so, didn't know. I mean, we
keep
all
us
do.
on time. Yeah.
There is nothing not nothing. There's a lot of things that make me excited, but I get really excited when I have a whole quarter of data that someone has entered into the gaps and I get to analyze it as their coach and say like, okay, let's compare quarter one from last year to quarter one of this year. And where are we seeing trends and what can we do? Cause that's when my brain starts picking apart, how are we doing towards these goals and outcomes and pulling that up and saying, look at everything we've accomplished. So this slide really just helps to say, okay, so you talked about strategic vision, which is high level, 3, 5, maybe 10-year focus, just depending on how far you are with things. Again, if you've never done this, start at 3 years. And what do I want for myself, my practice, and my team over the next several years? And the next layer of that is bringing it down in elevation to a 1-year focus. So we're still pretty high up. It's still pretty conceptual, not really granular. But by the end of this year, what do I want to experience or what do I want to feel different in my practice? Which then leads into annual goals. And these sit at about that same level. We're still at that 1-year focus. By the end of this year, what needs to happen, or can we say has happened, in order to achieve those outcomes? What do we need to do so that I can feel that way? And that's when it comes down from there into, okay, now we're getting a little lower level. So this is where we talked about, but what can I do tomorrow, next week, next month? We're going to break those down then into quarterly priorities. This is much lower level. It's a quarterly focus. What is the most important thing this quarter to move the needle towards that goal of by the end of 2025, this? So what are we going to do this quarter? And then you take weekly action. We encourage weekly team meetings with enough time and space to have some practice development time built into those weekly meetings so you and your team can take action. Writing and developing systems or fulfilling tasks or action items that are going to help make that priority for the quarter actually happen. So when you think strategically about future proofing your practice, you definitely have to look at who am I? Who do I want to be? What do we want it to feel like here? What type of team do I want? And then we need to turn that into high level, long term, and then bringing it down in elevation to this year, and then taking this year down into quarterly plan because it's so much easier to do things in smaller chunks. And then if that's our focus this quarter, then what are we going to do week over week over week, which ultimately becomes what we do every day in order to see it happen. So if I take that example of by the end of 2025, I want to be able to have an active patient base that supports me bringing on an associate. And so therefore, one of our goals is going to be, or what we're going to do quarterly is obviously going to be like building this patient base. We're going to need to do something with new patients. So maybe a quarterly priority is around evaluating and developing a new patient protocol or process. And so this whole quarter, the team and I are going to focus on, as the leader, we're going to focus on what is it like to experience our practice as a new patient and what do we want it to be? And we create that process from the phone call all the way through to the case presentation. And every week we sit down and we focus on this thing because it's the most important thing we need to do right now to help get to that goal of having more patients and having more patients stay so that ultimately I can fulfill my long-term vision.
I like this. If you think about this, we dentists, I'll include myself, we humans spend a lot of mental energy focused on things that aren't going to push us closer to our goals. And so when you have this mapped out, even if it's just annual goals, quarterly priorities, and then weekly action, and all of a sudden you find that you and your team have started debating the merits of your Facebook posts for the last 40 minutes. By itself may be important, but then you're like, wait a minute, is this discussion applying to any of our quarterly priorities? Yes or no? And do those quarterly priorities then apply to our annual goals? Yes or no? And so all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, this is important, but it actually isn't important in the strategic plan that I said. And so it helps us all just like, wait a minute, okay, let's take this outside of this meeting. Let's go solve that over here because these meetings are for attaining our annual goals, accomplishing our quarterly priorities. And weekly action, you should be spending your time solving problems that are stopping your priorities from getting accomplished, not things that live outside of that. For it's a great filter for us to say, how am I spending my mental energy? How are we spending this time? And let's kind of just use this as a filter always.
Yeah. And if you're one of those people who, and it happens to all of us, shiny object, crosses in front of you and you start following that shiny object and we're going to start doing this. Wait, let's stop. Let's filter that through our plan that we have in place and say, like, we decided that this quarter, the most important thing that we were focusing on is this. And like you said, how does that, shiny object, how does that fit into this most important thing that we already agreed upon? And it may, and we need to figure out how to work it into the process, or it may not. And we need to set that in the parking lot for now until we have this thing that we all agreed was the most important thing we were doing right now accomplished. And then maybe we can bring that back into the fold. So that's the thing that I think is the key filter is asking yourself at that low level, quarter by quarter, what is the most important thing that for the next 90 days we keep in our site? Like, what is that thing that we keep right in front of us, the most important thing for the next 90 days? Now, occasionally an emergency happens and we do have to shift gears. But for the most part, if we make this little roadmap for ourselves, we're going to be able to follow that and we're going to be able to get exactly where we want to go. And then that's where the future becomes exactly what we want it to be. But that needle's always moving too, though. So we're not going to get to 3 years and say, done. No, we're going to have a new 3-year vision and we're going to reestablish where we want to go from there. And at some point, it might be a maintenance plan. Like, I love where we are, but I still need to do the work to make sure we stay here. And at some point beyond that, it might be a transition plan because now it's time for me to start thinking about retirement and how I'm going to start approaching that. If you talk to some of our transition specialists, like our friend Paul Slutton, he's going to tell you, you need to be looking 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 years in advance of your retirement and starting to make little strategic plans towards that. If you wait till you're exhausted and you're like, I'm done, it's going to be really hard to navigate that transition. So it's just going to be a nice way for you to create that roadmap for getting exactly where you want to go. So some takeaways from me, and then I'll give you the floor too, Barrett, is, the future of your practice is completely in your hands. And it depends on the decisions that you're making today, where you're going to end up tomorrow. I often tell teams the systems that you have, and if you don't have them documented, what you're doing right now might be another way of saying it. What you're doing right now is getting you the results that you get right now. So if you want results that are different than what you're getting and experiencing right now, you have to do something different. And you have to plan for that and you have to be intentional. And then it's going to land right in front of you. And it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, we actually did exactly what I wanted to do. We got exactly where we wanted to go. Like, yeah, you made that plan and you worked it. Good job. And the best investment that you're going to make, it's not in new equipment. It's not in marketing, though those things are always great. It's not in acquiring new patients. although you need them. It's in yourself as a leader and as a business owner and an entrepreneur, and your ability to lead your practice and your team confidently into the future, to be able to navigate those external risks and threats and things that might be out there and opportunities, and be able to navigate those in a way intentionally where you end up where you want to be instead of the current just pulling you in whatever direction it's flowing at the time. Anything from you, Barrett, on some motivational final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say that we're here to help. And this BPA thing is exactly to serve, you. So come on in, become a BPA premium member, and you can get the gaps and you get the PPO roadmap and you can get all this stuff. And if you can watch all these recordings of this webinar, and it's your place and it's all right here. And let us help. So just come and join us, and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, and the other thing that we didn't really mention about it is that there's these forums for people
Yeah,
to
yeah.
communicate and hang out. And I mentioned earlier that my notifications, my BPA notifications on my app were going off all day because we had community members and dentists in there asking some really great questions today. Things around, the hygiene crisis and hygiene pay and what are you guys doing? And we were talking in there not too long ago about AI solutions for note taking and how to create efficiencies. And there's just day-to-day questions that pop up on a regular basis that it's really cool to be able to be a part of this community where everyone's leaning in and really supportive and in a positive way, which is really awesome. I imagine we have some questions or at least thoughts. Hopefully you've copied the CE and put it in the chat.
Yeah, the CE's
Okay,
in there. I've
great.
answered most of the questions. There was a
Okay.
question about the recording, and the recording will live right in the BPA. You can a BPA free member who has access to recordings to get all the some of the tools we talked about. You have to upgrade, but it's super cheap, so just do it. So that's where you can find all these recordings right in the BPA.
Sweet. And I have a QR code up. Again, this is the same slide that I had at the beginning that helps you to know you can go on your desktop and just join.actdental.com, or you can scan and join that way as well, or you can just go to the app store on your phone. This next session of our To the Top Study Club, that is the exclusive event for dentists to come and join us. And each quarter we focus on aligned in the quarter one SMART. So we just finished, and actually next week is in Napa for our data session number 2. And in the summer, we're going to be talking about leadership excellence and how do we build a team that is creates a fostering, flourishing environment and culture. How do we build that team? How do we provide feedback and develop that team? How do we, as a leader, stand confidently and strong and being able to lead people where we want to go? So you can have a vision, you can have all the strategy, but if you're not a confident leader and you don't have your team on board to help you get there, it's going to be harder. So you can join us in Milwaukee, July 18th and 25th, or if you've never been before and you're not a part of our community and you're a dentist who'd like to come sit in the room and just see what everything's all about, you can come on a golden ticket. You can come for free. And you can join us for either of those sessions. Just get in touch with us. You can reach out to Gina@actdental.com or Courtney@actdental.com. And you can talk about coming and hanging out with us and having a good time and seeing what ACT is all about. We just had a really great session last week and we all left feeling really re-energized and empowered. And we had some great discussions at our tables, which was super fun. So you can join us, like you said, Barrett, in that BPA basic space. But if you really want all the good stuff, like you said, it's a minor investment to be able to get to that next level and really be able to experience more of that sense of community and dive into some of the resources. No other questions or anything.
No. Great job, Miranda. You did awesome.
Great job, Barrett. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here with me today.
My pleasure.
I got you done on time so you can be on time for your next meeting.
I see that. Good job.
Hey, thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day. We appreciate it so much. And we look forward to seeing you in the BPA.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.